Member for Castro South.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my comment is not my contribution necessarily on the wisdom of the policy of buying shares. I want to deal first of all, Mr. Speaker, with procedural matters. And please, Mr. Speaker, as a presiding officer, you may wish to guide me on some of those matters. Usually I rely on the member for Beaufort South to advise on those matters. And let me just go back to what happened earlier in this House, Mr. Speaker. Under the papers to be laid, we laid a statutory instrument for the borrowing from the syndicate, which was passed in June. It was tabled this morning. It was laid in the House this morning, only for us 10 minutes later to revoke that motion for borrowing and to approve a new resolution. And I ask you procedurally, was there a necessity for us to have tabled the SI this morning? Now, it may very well, and I'm sure it was gazetted already, but we actually came to this house and we tabled an SI, which 10 minutes later we revoked. Was it necessary to do so? And that leads me, Mr. Speaker, to the next procedural question I want to ask you. And that will depend on whether or not I approve and support the resolution. The resolution does not mention any amount. It says authorization to use monies from the Consolidated Fund. And is it proper for the House to approve a resolution for borrowing or for the use of monies which does not state the amount that is involved? Because in a sense we are meeting here in Parliament and we are approving some that we don't even know, certainly by way of the resolution that was passed in the House. And I would certainly seek your guidance on it, Mr. Speaker. I don't want us to come back again and revoke. And I don't know exactly how it will play out, how it's supposed to be. In this gathering, in this room, I think I'm a new parliamentarian together with a couple of other members on the government side. But is this the correct way to do it? Shouldn't an amount be stated in the resolution? And I would seek your guidance on it. The third point I want to make, Mr. Speaker, and again for the records, the first resolution that was shared obviously had an error on it. It gave the impression that the government, the Prime Minister is just walking in, so he probably would not have heard my previous comment, and maybe I'll repeat it for him to hear, whether or not the resolution should not properly state the amount of money that is being, expended, and if it's the correct procedure to just state monies as against stating the exact amount. And I went on to make a point, Mr. Speaker. No, but the resolution does not have that. So, yes, in your statement, Mr. Speaker, the statement said a sum, but the resolution does not have that sum on it. And I'm asking you. The other point I was making, Mr. Speaker, is the resolution clearly had an error. It gave the impression that we were buying shares in Republic Bank, which are held by ECFH, and a correction was made. But in the Prime Minister's statement, and I'm sure I listened to him carefully, his statement of explanation still seemed to have contained the error. And follow me, Mr. Speaker. And the Prime Minister can probably point if I'm wrong. In his statement, he still referred to shares held by ECFH to be purchased in Republic Bank, almost as if his notes had not corrected the fact that the resolution had been amended. Now that becomes official document of the House. His statement goes down in the records. And I would ask him to just review his note and see whether or not I'm right. Because in his presentation, he seemed to have kept the error. And I don't know whether or not he would want to note that it may have been an error, that his notes were not corrected to reflect the change in the resolution. The fourth point I want to make, Mr. Speaker, is, and I need the Prime Minister to provide guidance on this. What exactly is the shareholding of NIC in ECFH? And could NIC not have bought those shares and probably got an extra director? Did it have to be the government to purchase those shares? And the leader of the opposition asked, why wasn't the public asked? I think the Prime Minister will say he wanted the government essentially to increase their shareholding and have more directors. But couldn't NIC do it? Did we have to use monies from the public purse to buy those shares? If NIC can buy those shares, increase the number of directors, and we still have the net effect of increasing the state influence in the decision making of the bank, assuming you want to achieve that as a policy measure. So I'm wondering, why are we using our state resources to buy shares when NIC can purchase it as an investment? And the question I have to ask, is the government intending to resell those shares to any entity, including the NIC? Because the government is purchasing the shares. Does the government have any intention of reselling those shares? Because if you look at the shareholding of NIC and the shareholding of the government, tactically you can even make a wiser decision than the government by itself buying all the shares. But that's not for me to make. I mean, these are policy matters for the government to make. And as usual, when we stand in this house and we make suggestions, like the leader of the opposition always says, you're castigated for making it. So I'm not getting involved in the policy making decision. I want to raise again, Mr. Speaker, 2 points that I wish you to guide me on. The one is point about the SI, I think is passed. So I don't know how we can, whether that's even of significance. But secondly, whether or not the resolution should not state the sum that the Prime Minister read out in his notes. Because in his notes he actually said what the sum was. But in the resolution there is no reference to the sum. And of course, Mr. Speaker, secondly, his statement to the House reflected the error that was in the previous resolution, and it did not seem that his notes were corrected. I may have missed some of the words, but I seem to have gotten the gist that he had not changed his notes in the official statement to the House. Thank you very much.